Okay, so you're probably asking yourself right now, wow, we're going to create a landscape material. I heard people saying before that this is one of the hardest materials to create. It can get so complex. It's very complicated to figure out how to use it. Every time I download from the marketplace and I open, I have no idea what's going on. And all those things are true. But like everything in life, in order to master something, you need to simplify in a few steps. And that's what we're going to be doing here. We're not going to build the most complex material possible with all the functionalities they can possibly have, because that takes time. And frankly, I just want to learn the bare minimum that you need in order to create a product. Something that you can play test it and have fun with your friend. So we're going to take the approach of simplicity first. Simple but functional, okay? What we're going to be doing is we're going to have two layers, well, three to be honest, but initially two layers. Everything that is grass is a layer. Everything that is not grass is going to be another layer. And we're going to call the other layer dirt or mud, or whatever you want to call is up to you. And then we're going to use that to procedurally place that texture, those colors into this landscape by slope. It's very important because what we're trying to do is on a certain specific angle, right? If the angle is too steep, becomes mud or stone. If the angle is a little bit flat, it's going to be grass. And every time that we see grass, what we're going to have Unreal do is procedurally place a selection of geometries and sprites that we want. Usually we are looking for stuff that doesn't need to have collision. So grass, small rocks, mushrooms, stuff like that. The actual trees we're going to set up in another way, but we could too. We could put trees in that way too. It's just the collision is a problem. But out of the batch, just get this looking green and lush, maybe some bushes here and there. And we're going to take this approach as simple as possible so it's easy for you to understand. And in the future, if you want to add functionality, you can look for tutorials online, you can shoot me a message, and it's going to be easier for you to understand as you're adding more stuff, essentially why those materials when you download it for the marketplace or when you see someone make a tutorial or a course online, why they look so complex, right? We don't need to make super complex out of the box, but we can definitely do something that gets the job done, pretty much. So with that out of the way, what I want to do is go to the bottom left of my screen, open my content drawer. I'm going to make sure that it's docked to the layout. So you can see me on the right here, on the bottom right, there's a button, dock layout. This way, it's going to be easier for me to navigate the folders. What I like to do when I create material, especially landscape material, I always have a folder called material library. And this is my way to try to organize the project into having everything that I need material specific into one place. So you go to, if you don't have a folder, if you're creating your own project, just create a folder called material library. Inside it, you're going to see that I already have a landscape folder. That's because I already set up this beforehand. And this is a copy that stays with you, so you can take a look after and see exactly what I did with this. But for the sake of this class, we're going to create from scratch. So I'm going to go here, right click, I'm going to create a new folder, or you can use the hotkey Ctrl-Shift-N, and you're going to call this landscape follow, as in follow along. Double click it, and inside this folder, if this is the first time that you ever play with Unreal, you probably never created a material. So in order to do so, right click, and you're going to see that you have a create basic asset. This is essentially the most used stuff that you can create in Unreal. That's the best way I can describe it. You're going to see that you have blueprints, levels, materials, and systems, Niagara systems, which is particle effects. You can create material by clicking on this, or if you want, you can go all the way down to the material section, and you can see all the possible things that you can create that is related to a material inside Unreal. For us, at this moment, we're just going to go material, boom, click it. I'm going to give the name of m_landscape follow. Press enter. Notice that we have an asterisk. That means it's not yet saved. So if you want to just select it, Ctrl S to save the asset. With that done, we're just going to double click. And this window that just opened in my other monitor is the material window. I'm going to drag it to the same location that my level is, as you can see there, so I can give this a full screen. This right here is what we call the material graph, as you can see in the top here. This is where all the connections, this is a node-based shading and material creation approach, okay? So it's not like Photoshop that is you're doing layers, you're essentially doing nodes that connect and have functionalities. So this is where you're gonna build that structure. This is where we're gonna be spending a lot of this time that we're doing right now. And every time you click on something, you're going to be able to see the details here. On the top here, you see that you have your preview, which is essentially the viewports. And you can go to the top here and change this thing here to change the background, which is a new feature that was introduced recently, which is very, very useful. I find very distracting seeing the ADRI of the Epic headquarters. I prefer to just see a gray right frame. The lights is still being affected. That's why I not, and I don't have the distraction of everything else. This is super useful. On your right here, you have something called palette, which is essentially all the possible things that you can put inside this material graph. So I can just go here, click and drag, and then, whoops, I don't know what that happened. You did not see that. I can just drag a panner. There you go. And then that's a node that I can use. And notice a lot of this stuff has a key beside it. That's a good indication that that's something that's used often. That's why there is a hotkey for it. So if you see here the constant, if I press 1, I hold 1 on my keyboard and I press the left mouse click, every time I press it, it's going to create that node for us, right? So that's a constant vector 1. If you hold 2, do this, 3, 4, so on. Maybe you'd like to use this, so you can just open and click that thing there so it stays open all the time, and you can use the search to find whatever you want. I personally do not like it, but I know some people do. What I like to do is right-click, and I just go here to this menu, which is essentially the menu beside it, and just look for whatever I want. So just say constant, right? That's kind of the way that I like to approach when I'm working on. Truth be told, though, you're probably going to know the hotkeys for the majority of this by the end of this course. So we're just going to do that. So as I'm creating, I'm going to tell you exactly what hotkey I'm clicking. I'm going to explain to you why that node exists, and then it's going to be easier to understand based on that. All right, so what I need to do first, I just want to apply this material to the world. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back to my world here. With the world selected, I'm going to go to my details tab, and you're going to see landscape material. I'm just going to click and drag this there. If I did this correctly, and I did, you can see it's going to override for the slack color, which is the color the material has assigned to it. That's pretty cool. Everything else I'm going to be doing on top of this is just variations of what we have in the screen. So I'm going to start like making changes. The first change I want to do is just going to go back to my material really quick, is make sure that this color is green. So Unreal introduced these options here that you can just change it. You can just click here and just pick a color and it's going to work. I'm not a huge fan of that. You can see the preview updating here. What I like to do is actually build that functionality, okay? So I Control Z, and what I need to do is a green color. And in order to get a green color, I need to have, I need 3 channels, right? I need to have 3 channels, red, green, and blue. I can just put the green channel there, but if I just connect one green channel, it's just gonna read differently. So here, press 3 in your keyboard and left click, and now you have a constant tree. It has 3 channels of information. And look at this is very interesting too. Red, green, and blue is also X, Y, Z. For all intents and purposes, this is just data. So you have 3 vectors of color, 3 vectors of position. So if I just do this, connect this thing here to there, it's not going to be green because essentially that's only, oops, there's a flickering very happening in the background there. So I'm going to remove that. It looks like a bug. But essentially, if I connect the green straight up here, it's not really reading that as a green channel. It's reading as one channel of information, okay? Well, it is reading as a green channel. What I meant is not reading that as a green color. So that's important because what I need is the combination of red, green, and blue together. So in order to do that, I need to pull from the first one. That's RGB. So RGB to basic color. And if I go to their second data here and put 1, that's green channel. So now my sphere is green, which means if I save this, my landscape is also going to be green. Pretty cool. I can always change the color by selecting and just going to the details here and change the information there too. There's a very annoying thing that happens. Every time we change the color, we need to save. We're going to learn pretty soon how to not have to do that. But for now, that's how we're going to approach it. So if I go back to my world, now everything is blue. The landscape is green. But I also want, and when you have the mountains, the side of the mountains, I want it to be another color. So I'm going to go Control C, Control V, or press 3, hold the 3 in the keyboard and press the left click. And the next one I'm going to put is a dirt color. But here's the problem. I cannot connect them both to base color. It's either one or the other, right? So if I connect this thing here, just press save, and you can see that detail happening there. You change the color, go back. So how exactly can I mix stuff inside the material? That's important. I know it's very basic for some of you. So bear with me for a second. There is a node that if you hold L and click, that's a lerp, that you can mix two different materials with an alpha. The alpha can either be a number, so it's give me yellow, or if I just go here, right click noise, and I make sure the scale of this noise is very small. And if you want to see what's happening with that noise, you can always right click, start previewing nodes. That's a trick. You can see exactly how that looks like. You can stop previewing that node. So right click, start previewing is how you take a look. And if I connect to alpha now, this is how my landscape looks like. If I save it, and I see it, and if I get very close, you can see that detail applying everywhere. That's not really what I want, and that's not really how I want to approach this, but the logic underneath it is the same. I need to make it a way to mask something based on the levels of slope in the landscape instead of just a texture. So how exactly should I approach that? Well, luckily for us, there is a node inside Unreal that does exactly that. I'm going to right click, I'm going to look for world, align, blend. This node here essentially is going to calculate the slope of the surface, and it's going to be able to dictate which color goes where. Okay? The same way that I did this thing here, I use a texture for that. I'm going to delete it, press delete, and I'm going to pull the alpha and connect there. As I'm doing this, it seems like nothing happened. And if I save it, I'm pretty sure you won't be able to see much in the landscape right now. Yeah, everything is green. But if I go here, there's only two things that matter for me for this, to be quite honest with you, is the blend sharpness and the blend bias. The bias is how much of the angle you're going to be seeing, and the sharpness is how the transition between the two colors are going to be play out. By default, this is too smooth. So what I need to do is press one and hold one and press the left click, and let's say put this thing here at 50 and connect to sharpness. So now you should be able to see a clear cut into the graphic, which also dictates to us that this is going to render incorrectly. But I'm going to leave the error here so you can see how that looks like. I'm going to save it. And if I go to my landscape right now, you're going to be able to see the flat areas will have brown, and the steep areas will have green, which is we want the opposite, to be honest. See, you cannot even see that yet, but we're going to have to play with that for a second. So what I want to do is actually invert the order of the colors, because that is very important. You're essentially seeing a representation of the slope here. So this is a very flat surface would be on the top, and then you have an angle, and then it gets to this almost like 90-degree angle, change the material. So that's the sharpness right there, by the way. If you do 20, you're going to see that the transition is a little bit smoother. But we don't want it to be smooth. We actually want it to be super sharp. You can even put 100 if you want. But what we need to do right now is make sure that the green moves up. We want the transition to be all the way on the top here. So that's where bias comes from. For the bias, I want to approach a little bit different. I want you to right-click and promote to a parameter. And parameters are amazing. This is essentially something that every time I make a change, you can see that I need to save it and go there to check it. The parameter is interesting because once you save it, you can do changes in real time. So here for that, I'm going to move this to the side here so you can actually see that thing there. I'm going to save it. And on my bias here, ooh, something changed. I'm going to select the full value, which is this thing here, and I'm going to start moving up and down. So as I'm moving up, I see more green. I actually want to see less green. And I mean this by this preview here. And as I'm starting to transition that stuff to the negative values, you can start seeing that that's showing up in the landscape. Isn't that cool? That's pretty much the basis of what we're going to be doing. So in the next video, we're going to explore how to use textures on this. But this thing here that we just did is how we're going to texture the whole landscape. This small setup, I told you, is going to be basic and easy to understand. It's going to allow us to do this interesting transition between one color, which is representing our grass. And then as the angle of the landscape gets a little bit steeper, is that a word? I think so. I don't know. But as it gets higher, it starts to become another material. And that's literally a mask and a way to texture. Okay, so now that we have this, what I want to do is not use just colors, but also textures. So how can we do that? I'm going to open my material here right now and pretty much what we have here is the basic setup of it. Because we're doing a little bit stylized, kind of like old school looking. You can do normal maps and stuff like that, but I'm not going to use it in this case. So what I want to do is make sure that my roughness is 100%, 0.5 right now. If I put to 0, that surface is going to be super reflective, super smooth. That's not what we want. We want it to be 1. Metal can be as it is, but a texture would probably go a good way here, right? It would probably improve a little bit the way that this looks. I also want to make sure that I don't need to be closing and opening to make those changes. I want to be making the change on the fly. So before I even do that, I'm going to right click, create material instance. And naming convention would be mi landscape follow. So the difference between a material and a material instance, if you double click, you can see it's also color coded. One is bright green, the other one is dark green. If I click it, I only have available for me to change what it was exposed in the mother or the parent material. So right here, if I click on the thing there and I push this down to see this, that's the only sagging that is available. Oops, actually, we forgot the most important, which is to assign that there. And now if I move this, you can see that I can control that. So the reason why we're doing this is because right now we only have one control, but we're going to be creating multiple. And you can see here that it says parameter groups, global scalar parameter, blend bias. So we're going to try to be a little bit more precise with the name of those things. But before that even happen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to our main material. We're going to put this to the side here. And what I want is to be able to have one texture, two textures using the same control for slope. There are two ways to do this. So the first one, you can just click and drag a texture in here. So if you want, you can just go to the content drawer, bottom left. And if you go to my material library, the first landscape, there is a folder called textures. I went ahead and added a few textures for you here, and you can double click and take a look how they look like. They're very low resolution by design. Oops, let me go back here. So you have grass, you have dirt. So what I'm going to do, I can just click and drag this to here. So that's my grass right there. Or I can just right click, texture, sample, and look for a texture that exists. So in this case here, I think sand or dirt might be more interesting. So I'm going to select dirt. So now I have two textures here. And you guessed it, it's pretty straightforward. I just need to go here and connect this to this instead of having the color. So there's two ways to do it. You can just click and drag and override and delete this. Or, it's already showing up there, you can just control click and drag and essentially can rearrange the position of the connections. So I'm just gonna put it there. I'm gonna save it. And let's take a look how this looks right now as is in our landscape. All right, clearly it's working. And I think the colors match together, which is pretty cool. But when I get close to it, I can see a lot of repetition. And I want to try to avoid seeing so much repetition. The grass, I see a lot of repetition too. So there are multiple ways to achieve the breaking of repetition. You can have, when the camera is close to it, it repeats less. When it's far away, there's a different tiling. All that stuff is too complex for the scope of this course. So what we're going to do, and I know it's going to sound counterintuitive, we're going to go back to our material. We're going to essentially make the size of the styling super big. So in order to do that, in order to control the UV, there is a node called texture coordinate. You can see here there has a U and a V tiling. And if I connect to this, I can just change this thing by 0.1, 0.1, and I save it. So now when I see this, you can see that my tiling changed. The problem is I want to be able to control this in my instance, right? And there's no way to expose those values. I cannot just go here, right click, promote parameter. That doesn't exist. So the way that we achieve this is by using a little bit of math. So I'm going to return the original values 1, and I'm going to do a math operation. So these two values multiplied by something equals the amount of tiling. So if I just go here and push and type multiply, or if I just press M, hold M and press the left click, I'm going to create a multiply node. And remember, control click and drag, rearrange the order. By just doing this, I can just go to this thing here, press 1 click, hold 1, click with the left mouse, just to be clear. And if you multiply anything by 0, the value is going to be 0. But if I multiply by 0.1, it's going to have essentially the same effect that it just had a second ago. But the difference is this thing here, this is a constant 1, a single information. I can just go right click and convert to parameter, and I can give a name. And it's important that parameter names are always unique. So this one here is going to be UV tile, whoops, underscore dirt. So if I save this now, I go back to my material. I push my material instance that was all the way in the top there. Or I can just double click and open here. I can see that this value now is exposed. So if I enable it in my instance, I can play with the size of that texture. So what I want to do is pick like a number that doesn't look super off, but doesn't look super tiny either. So I think 0.1 is perfect because I can see the detail from far away, and I know there's some information. If it was 1, it's just a bunch of tiny dots. So I want something that I can see from far that has some kind of information there. So that works for me. So now what I need to do is just go back and do the same thing for the grass here. So I can Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and I can just connect. But notice, if I change this value here, it's also going to affect the other one. Why? Because they're sharing the same name. So I need to make sure that this name here is different. So I can go to this one here instead of dirt. I just say grass. Always change the name first, not the value. If you change the value, it's going to affect everything else, and it's going to override it. So you want to change the name first, then the value. I can just save it. And if I go back here, I can now see the grass texture there. That's pretty cool. Remember, the grass for us is just a base. So when my character is walking around, it has where to walk. We are actually going to put stuff on top like actual foliage. So we don't need to worry that much about this right now.